Just okay, so it just started. So first of all, welcome everybody to line session. So we have Arthur's here to give us a session on becoming adaptable. So as most of you know that Arthur is an experienced knowledge leader and community facilitator. So he has written 4 books, which is The Organizational Zoo, Being a Successful Knowledge Leader, and The Knowledge Succession. I won't mention the new one yet, but each book actually builds on his insights on his work, including experience and workshop. And collectively, this connect and extend the concept into pragmatic and creative ways to apply the idea for personal and also professional development. So his latest book, Becoming Adaptable, is a collection of proven interactive activities and story on how adaptability can be achieved and the benefits that this brings for those who apply it on practice. So without further ado, I pass the mic to Arthur, and now it's all yours.
Great, thanks very much, Arthur Shelley too. Maybe you're Arthur Shelley 1 and I'm Arthur Shelley 2. Thanks,
yeah, I'm 2.
Appreciate that. Let's make this very conversational. I've put together a bunch of extracts, mainly images from the book, just to facilitate around them as I would want people to use them. So we'll play with these ideas. Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm just looking for the if I share the screen. Okay, and then we'll go here. So you should have a screen that's shared with the picture of the 3 books on the screen, right? Yep, excellent. All right, so what I really wanted to do was to facilitate maybe 3 to 5 conversations. When we get bored with one conversation, we'll move to the next. What's going on with these ideas? Becoming adaptable is a series of creative facilitations, things that you can use as what I call conversation starters, to get people involved in conversations around, the creation of new knowledge, the development of insights, whether it be, solving problems or building new opportunities that don't exist. So there's a whole series of different ways to facilitate that. So I think I put about 6 or 7 of them in the deck. We probably won't get through 6 or 7 of them. So that's what we're going to do. But to get us started, and I don't think I'll see the link here. What I want you to do in the chat is just to say, what's your primary reason for thinking we need to become adaptable? So I'll give you like just 90 seconds. The big reason that comes to, we need to adapt because, and quickly punch that in to the chat. And I'll try and bring the chat up here if I can. Okay. Thanks, Stu. Requisite variety. Dick, situations we can't control. Sharon, because change is constant and we need to adapt to it. Yep, good. Other people still popping ideas in. Another one if you want to know what life keeps changing, absolutely. If you've already put one in, have a little think about what's in the chat. You can just browse through the chat yourself on your own machine. Just think about what other people are saying and just reflect on that in a moment. I think most people on the call have put something there now.
So I think that's pretty much.
Yep. All right. So let's, nice, Catherine, to improve. So is the desire, is improvement an action or is it an outcome? What do you think, Catherine? You're muted, Catherine. Sorry.
Sorry, I was more mulling. It wasn't more. Look, I think that's an action. It's not the outcome.
Yeah. So you want to take some sort of action to improve, but you're not really sure what the outcome of that improvement might be.
It's like someone said, I think that their religion was the god of angst, and that was to move away from angst. So it's just like, something's not working and you want to improve to actually, to get a less angst-ridden life. So, the improving, but then your goal is to, like for me, I had all these can of worms and I wanted to do the PhD to try and make sense of it. So the improving is to, take you to a new state. Yeah,
no, that's very good, and I agree. Oh, by the way, can you actually see the chat screen on the screen that you're looking at?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's I put it there because I want it to be shared. So as we go through, Brad, you didn't actually enter anything, I don't think.
I did. I did.
Where are you?
I had where did it go?
I don't know. It disappeared.
Sorry.
Yes, I can't see that too.
What did you actually put?
To adapt.
Why you want to adapt?
Oh, why? Because we are. Because if you think about COVID, right, and all the things that have happened, there's all these unforeseen changes that are happening externally that are impacting shifts and changes in our internal world. And being adaptable is being able to respond to those unforeseen shifts and changes, because we react, which is like a reflex. But I think responding is more considered. So I think it really is about being adaptable. For me, it's about like being an elastic band, right?
Yep.
It's about being able to flex and stretch when you need to.
Yeah, it's a really good insight, and I've been making this little series of like mini 1 to 2 minute insights and just putting them out there on a channel. There's a reference to it later, but I talked about exactly that in one of the videos. I mean, the idea is, rather than react to the situation that you've been dropped into, when you get really good at adaptability, you can plan adaptability, and actually, you get to the stage where you can proactively influence what that situation is by switching to some other mechanism. You can go into a situation where you just get depressed or sad or go into conflict or whatever, but actually, if you've got a lot of adaptability, you can find an alternative which actually leads to an improved outcome rather than sort of just
Sorry, Arthur. Yes, your audio is sometimes difficult to hear. Is that just myself or
everybody?
Everybody. Okay.
Maybe
seems audio.
I'll do something about it. Might be. Is it interference or it's buzzing in and out?
It's buzzing in and out.
How is it now?
Like it wobbles.
Yeah. So is it okay now?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. It was probably just dragging around in my shirt collar somewhere. All right. Thank you. Thanks for advising. Amir, you made an interesting remark there about the challenges for a new immigrant to join the country. Would you like to expand on that a little?
Yeah, because when we come to a new country, it's a new culture, and we should adapt to the new culture to find a job and to reach our goal. So if we become adaptable, we can solve the cultural shock. We should find some friends and become mixed to the people in the new country. If we want to become successful, we should think like that.
Yeah, no, it's a really good insight, and I'm on the board of a charitable organisation who tries to integrate Afghan refugees into Australian society. Now, when you say that, a lot of people just in their head go, "Oh, you need to turn them into Aussies." but that's not what we try and do. Actually, what we try and do is to bring their culture and insights into our society to improve our society, because they bring other things with them that we don't currently have. So, you know, that's you know, it's not just a matter of, you know, getting immigrants to change to our ways. It's actually acknowledging and recognizing that, you know, sort of everyone who comes to a society has values, and some of the things they need to adapt to, but also a clever society adapts by incorporating the best of what they bring as well. And Australia's not that great at doing that, actually, and that's why these organisations need to exist to help. That's really nice, Catherine. That edition that you wrote about, you know, to survive, to improve, I agree. Actually, in the original Blue Book back in 2007.
Sorry, but you start to like
wobbling again.
Yeah, that's strange. I initially I think that may be the internet connection, but your video is quite smooth, so I don't think that's the problem.
Let's try it without this. Is that any better?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yes, I think it's better.
All right.
Much
Okay.
better.
Good. Problem solved a long ago to improve, but not necessarily just to survive, right? We'll keep going a bit, but I just wanted to finish off that comment, Catherine, that was responding to your comment. In the original organisation book, I wrote a piece about the difference between survival and flourishing. You know, sometimes we behave in a way to just survive. If we're in a toxic environment, or we're being bullied, or, you know, we're being pushed around by.
Sorry. It start to get that again. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay. This is not very good. I don't know if I speak louder. Does it help?
It may, but sometimes it's just like it seems like the internet is really slow when you get that kind of effect. But yeah.
Okay. Let's try. Do I just keep going, or is it so bad we should stop?
Arthur, when you talk, it sounds okay, and when you continue to talk, it goes off. Maybe that's the bandwidth, but maybe if you talk and then just give a small gap and then talk again, it might be okay. When you talk now, I can hear you fine.
Short, sharp sentences.
Perfect.
I will see if I can become adaptable and talk that way. Okay, so let's try that. I think what I was just wanting to finish up was understanding the difference in behaviors in order to survive. What do I need to do to stay alive, or to keep financially viable, compared with what do I need to do in order to become amazingly successful and happy. And these are the kinds of things that can be improved outcomes depending on the behavioral choices that we make.
I was thinking particularly for the to survive was when Brad mentioned the pandemic. And, you know, and during the pandemic, people said, look, the objective here is just to survive, you know, for during lockdowns. So you had to adapt, but you were adapting just to survive, you know. Yeah, so you started to adapt to survive just to mentally get through the lockdowns, which is like somewhat different than your normal day survival versus thriving. Survive was like that was the tick box. But yeah, it's very interesting, the comments that you're making.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. So what I'm going to do now, other than talk slowly, is to go to the next comment. And we may have partially done this already, but think about what others have said in the chat, and whether there was something there that you really resonate with and that you would like to add to or reinforce. So I'll give you a moment just to have a quick sort of scan through. So I'll do a minute from now, and then we'll come back and have a bit more of a chat about that. Okay, anyone like to come back with a comment about what somebody else wrote?
I can start.
Simon?
So I was just reading through it, and even though we didn't touch both what Amir and Sharon both allude to in their comments, that is how I interpret them, is that there's Amir, you actually names it like in a new culture, but also that culture is a constant evolving mechanism that is never a stagnate. You can never have a full described written down culture in an organizational chart, for example. It will always change and adapt, and that was not the point of view that I had when I went into this tonight, because I read an article earlier this morning about magpies that kind of talked about adaptability, but it was kind of like having that we need to adapt in order to navigate everyday structures we work into, but both push but also pull ourselves away. Like it's not something like we get pushed, but we also push other people we meet or other cultures and influence people, and they influence us as well. So that was some of the things that I like reflect on, thinking here that like it's interesting to see these in different settings, like in how they have been written in the chats.
Yeah, and that's a deliberate part of the design of this activity. And we'll wrap this up in a moment, and I'll ask just if there are anyone else that want to contribute. But the point that you're making here is, there's the individual view. What do I think? And I'm sharing that view with, sort of 8 other people on the call. But then other people have said things that maybe I don't relate to at all, or maybe it's, oh yeah, that's right. It stimulates that thought. You say, yeah, but that's kind of different but similar. So you see a bigger diversity of ideas, and that stimulates the thinking, and that's what the question is designed to do. Anyone else want to comment on that before we move into the next activity?
One point, I love the comment, life is changing. It is very important to adapt to the world that it changed continually.
Yeah, and I think that'll get picked up in the next image, actually, rather well. But the point is well made. How are we going with my voice? Is it still breaking up?
No, it's very good. So it's a lot clearer.
Okay,
Yes,
okay. So the point of this activity, and I use this style of activity quite a lot when I'm working like in executive education and that sort of thing. Instead of saying, these are the 6 reasons why we should adapt, you switch it into a question and a conversation. So you say, well, why do you think we need to adapt? And you get a range of things, as Amir said, and Simon also, that, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. So, education is too often, facilitation is too often advocated as knowledge transfer. I'm here to teach you what I know. Whereas actually adaptability and success, I would argue, comes from exploring what we collectively know. And from that saying, what do we collectively not know? And where are the opportunities in those gaps? So rather than talking about what it is that we have, it's what do we do around the things that we don't have? And very often by asking the question, you think we don't have something, but it turns out that you do. And I've seen this many times in large organizations in particular. Someone will say, oh, we don't have the capability for that. But actually, someone in a different part of the organization, oh, we've done that many times. But they don't talk to each other. They don't ask the questions and they don't engage. And as a result, you end up reinventing the wheel and, not creating new insights for existing problems. We're just trying to find problems for existing knowledge. So switch the statements into questions is the key thing. Any comments on that? Thoughts?
I think the key point is you have to open mind. Open mind is the key for this issue, But unfortunately, many people don't have open mind.
Yeah. And one of the things I've always said in the education programs that I've run is that education is not about filling your mind, it's about opening it. So that's very true, Amir. It's opening your ideas. And one of the activities that I don't think we'll get to is about stepping outside your comfort zone. But it's in the deck, and I'll share the deck so you can have a look at that. And how do you step outside your comfort zone to explore those things that you don't have knowledge of, and build your confidence in doing that? Okay, I'll move. I'm going to go to this activity first, and then I might come back to the book cover, or maybe not. I wanted to look at a range of different ways of how we become adaptable. Actually, if you look at the back cover of the book, so this is actually the cover of the book, this statement about, everyone knows that adaptability is important for success and well-being. No doubt about that. That's clearly documented. However, very few people know how to become adaptable. What do I do? How do I, get those things that I don't have? And very often we resort to like formal education. Formal education will give you the knowledge, but not necessarily the skills or the confidence. So how do you build your adaptability? Formal education rarely will teach you about behavioral adaptability. It's focused on skills and knowledge and not on that behavioral stuff, unless you're doing some sort of special EQ course or something like that. So what we're trying to do, I might as well do the story while I'm here. The book cover, some of you know Mark, and Mark and I are the illustrator in the book. He's been part of KMLF from time to time. We wanted to get a message through to the people, and a lot of the activities in the book are built around the creative organizational zoo metaphors, each animal being a representing a behavior. But here you have the young kid, which is the new naive sort of person coming into the organization, and often when they come in, there's the triceratops represents the change resistant dinosaur type thing. They come into the organization, sort of the ad was for innovative, new, young ideas, blah, blah, blah. But when they get into the organization, they actually see that it's quite rigid and fixed. But the person coming in has a choice. They can be like the naive kid and sort of step outside that current environment and look still within the same organization, but look outside. And that's what the back cover's about. They look outside and there's a range of other behaviors that they can seek. And they can see who else is out there, what other sorts of behavioral components. So rather than complain about the rigidity and the change resistance and the control and command that's in place, complaining about what you can't do, look for what you can do. So as you go from the front of the book to the back of the book, you learn more about these opportunities to find ways to encourage you to build your confidence, to adapt and step out. And of course, once the kid has gone through the book and out the other side, you still see that the change-resistant dinosaur is still inside the office, doing what they've always done. So we've got to have that confidence to step out and try things differently and to explore different, partners and people to work with in order to move ahead. So you've got to be prepared to do that and to take the risk, the creative leap, as one of my friends would say. That's Alex Bennett, who Stuart also knows very well. So coming back to the primary way to become adaptable is to facilitate social interactions, to engage with people. And I'm going to ask you what you think of this in a moment. I'm hoping not just to talk at you, but to engage you in a facilitated social interaction, get your perspectives on this. I find a really powerful way to do that is to engage people in what I call collaborative conversation spirals. And this is kind of like when you start, it's an 8-step process and you work through it. But when you're experienced, it all just comes together in a natural flow. But if you break it down and understand, what are the 8 elements in the conversation, then, you don't always have to put them in order, but you've got to make sure that all of these things are happening in order to get the best outcomes. So if we quickly run through it, and then I'll get your feedback on it. The first thing to do is to acknowledge differences. Rather than advocating, well, this is my way and you have to do it my way, I'll go, well, what do you think? What kind of ways would you do this? That's interesting. That's not the way I would do it, right? Because if you acknowledge the differences and you ask the questions to see a range of ways, as we did before, why do you think we need to become adaptable instead of giving you 6 bullet points? So you then acknowledge that we see it differently because we come from different cultures, because we've got different reasons for adapting. We can then respect the other perspectives. I don't say, Amir, that's rubbish. Where do you think you're coming from giving me that? I'll go, oh, Amir, that's really different to the way I would see it. Tell me more about that. I'm interested to find out. So that acknowledgement and respect leads to a conversation that engages us to explore why these differences are there. Because it may be we're both wrong. It may be we're both right, even though it's different. It may be there are elements of right and wrong in both of our ways. But that conversing to inquire, going on to step 4, enables us to uncover some of those elements. So once we've got through those questions and we're starting to learn from each other, we can then actually start to adapt to build our capability right across the range, knowing, doing, being, and eventually becoming. If we know stuff and we can do stuff and we know how to engage with other people to inspire them or engage them to become part of it, rather than controlling them to force them to be part of it, then we're much more likely to get that adaptability. So that kind of spiral, and it's, by the way, it's a spiral. Notice it's a DNA structure, because what we're trying to do is to build this type of conversation into our DNA, into our normal way of interacting. We don't want to say, oh, we need to do a special, collaborative conversation spiral. We're just doing it as part of what we do. And as we go through, the more that we, acknowledge, respect, converse, inspire, inquire and adapt, we start to become more confident. We build trust. We become more sharing of the knowledge that we've got because we've got that trust and relationship. And that allows us to engage in collaboration that is not just about survival, but to engage in collaboration that flourishes where we're going to. And as a result of that, we create social value, which brings us back to the next point of acknowledging. We go back and start the spiral again. But you know what? It's not a cycle. We're not going back to where we started. We are now in an elevated position. There's more shared knowledge, there's more confidence, there's more capability, there's more openness to collaborate. So we're acknowledging that we're starting from a new position at a higher level so that the next spiral takes us from that higher level even further up. And that's why you keep connecting them like a strand of DNA. Does that make sense? Does it work? Is it something you already do naturally? What do you think?
I popped a question into the chat, but also a thought around, so within an organization, right? So if you have someone who wants to practice this becoming more adaptable, which is great because, we're developing this muscle, this different way of behaving and thinking and developing a new mindset. But often you can bump into that, we've done it this way for 20 years. What do you're not the first guy to come with this idea. So you bump into this institutional cynicism, and we've done this, and the tiredness and exhaustion of people. And if you're one person or part of a few, it gets tiring, right? To develop something new requires energy. And we've tried to do this in an organization, and we keep hitting that, whoa, just slow down there, young grasshopper, what do you think you're doing? I'm not saying those exact words, but I mean there are risks involved at a personal level. I think putting yourself out there. Some people are really great at it, and some people struggle when they get a few knockbacks. Yeah.
Really good input. Thanks, Brandon. I think that can go both ways, right? So you can find organizations that are very much the triceratops, I'm not going to change, we need to do it this way because that's the way it's always done. But then you can get the opposite as well. They're all, creative, gibbons and hyenas, and they just want to sort of, just rush out there. And, you see this in some, undisciplined agile teams. There's lots and lots of flurry, but no output and outcome. Everyone's running and doing the new thing, and everyone's trying to do the new thing, and that's where you need a little bit of that triceratops. Hang on a minute, we've been through this cycle 6 times, and it's never generated any outcome. So it can be, the stubborn change resistance can be the right thing. Equally, combating that with creative moving forward and open minds and all of that can be the right thing. It depends on the nature of the organization and what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
Other thoughts on the
I find this like the spiral very interesting, and I like reflecting a bit on it on my own organization and how we work. Is like there's a lot of the acknowledgement and the respect, and then you kind of skip 3 and 4, like the converse and the inquire. Like you don't really have that, and then it kind of like it just jumped directly to adopt and became an engage and co-create. But by skipping the 2-step in the beginning, you lose a lot of the engagement eventually, because it's kind of like people don't feel like they're heard in some way. And it's really quite interesting, because at the moment, like also as you put in, Brad, like example, this is how we operate culture. Like my organization is now again doing a massive piece of documenting what the culture is, and I've been there for 2 years now, and that's the second time they're doing it. And I'm like thinking, you did this last year, why are you doing it again? Like what is it you're trying to document, instead of just putting in not a culture framework, but like a tool to explore what it is that it means a bit more, rather than putting all these efforts into these beautiful graphics and PowerPoints that essentially says nothing.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And we've all probably seen examples of where procedures are documented to death, but actually it doesn't reflect at all what's happening in the organization. We need a document, we need a policy, we need all of this documentation, but actually nothing ever changes and nothing improves. And they'll tick the box on a compliance audit, but if you looked at a value creation audit, they would fail miserably, because all of the time, effort, and that money is put into documenting things which should be, but actually aren't. You often see it in large bureaucracies.
Yeah. Well, I work in one, so there we go.
Lucian, what about you? You're kind of sitting there quite reflective. What's your thoughts?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. That's very kind of you. I thought I found myself comparing this idea of adaptability with my own software and philosophy explorations, and I thought that I surprised myself by thinking I'm more based on the known end of the spectrum rather than the adaptable one. But on the other hand, I also find myself thinking I want something original each time I work, and I must have some sort of basis for every project, which is totally makes the whole thing more different. So that yes, I sort of what I meant by the first one is I frame it I frame the project in terms of what it actually does. Yes,
and that can be very comforting to have that predictability. And of course, you know, the more quantitative you are about it, it's, you know, you can tick the KPIs and the measurability, if you like, of the project that you're doing. But in the end, you know, you see projects which, you know, sort of, you know, tick all the boxes, but actually they become white elephants because they haven't, you know, engaged the people around them. So, you know, good examples of that was, you know, the first time they tried to automate or digitize the London Stock Exchange, there was an enormous amount of money. You know, it was like hundreds of thousands of pounds, maybe even millions of pounds. I can't remember now, but it was a lot of money, and they spent all of the money, and absolutely no output at all was generated. And you know, it's not uncommon in large projects, you know, to what they focus on delivering the tangibles, but actually they don't necessarily deliver some sort of sustainable value creation from that tangible asset that was generated. So it's and this is where the adaptability is really important, and particularly, you know, the converse, inquire, adapt, you know, as you go, and agile does that so much better. I'll give you a good example. By the way, when I've just put all of your faces over to the other side of the screen, and on my screen it's covering up the spirals. On your screen, I don't think it does that, right? No, okay, that's all right. So I want to be able to see you all, but I can't see you all in minimized form. So, you know, we want to socially engage here, right? One of the games or activities that we do is we look at, you know, what's an appropriate set of behaviors for a particular context. So if you look at this one on the left, there's, you know, what kind of, you know, warm and fluffy sort of, but still some aggression would you have for a basketball team? And then what kinds of, you know, more aggressive styles would you require for something like a rugby football match? And maybe a soccer match is somewhere in between, right? But what we're trying to do here is to visualize what the behaviors might look at. Anyone without any knowledge of the tool can look at that and they go, well, you know, the team on the basketball team was a lot more passive style, and that suits the non-contact sport. Now, I played and coached basketball. I know it can get pretty rough at times, but as a general sort of rule, you know, it's a lot more non-contact than something like rugby, right? Where every time someone touches the ball, somebody's trying to pull their head off, yeah, and quite literally. And so the aggressive style, the aggressive culture for all aspects of the game, even the smaller roles, are required to be successful in rugby. And the more passive types with a bit of aggression is more appropriate for basketball. But now think about it. People say, oh yeah, we're more like this one or we're more like that one. I go, well, I hope you're not just one. I hope when you're doing a brainstorming, you're off like basketball style. And when you're actually, you know, on delivery day for a major project, you're much more like aggressively attacking the task, like the football team. But the aggression is on the task, not on each other. So the idea is you need to be both. You can say, oh no, this is our culture. Yeah, well, overall, stereotypically, that might be your culture. But even in moments of a day, you need to adapt to be one style or another. You come from one meeting and it's fantastic. You've just had a creativity session to generate a whole range of ideas, you know, for next year's strategy. But tomorrow you've got to come back in and look at those 1,000 ideas and say, we can only fund 4 of them. And if you're still in, you know, basketball mode, and you can't flip into, you know, sort of aggressive, attack the task, we're going to kill 996 of these ideas today, basically you're going to be less successful. And the last thing you want is in the middle of that prioritization and you're halfway through, you've kicked out 500 ideas, and then someone says, oh, but hang on, I've got a new idea. You know, it's like, hang on, that behavior was appropriate yesterday and it was great yesterday, but right now, you know, we've moved on from there and we need to behave differently. And when we come back into the right stage of the cycle in the right situation, we need to adapt back again. The good thing about Agile is you're going through those cycles pretty much every week, if not every day. The thing about, you know, traditional waterfall style project management is you tend to be kind of in one for 3 months and then you're in the other, you know, for 3 months. And the problem is that what you've learned in the meantime doesn't get taken into the mix. So it reduces the level of new ideas and knowledge and innovations and flexibility that you can bring in to the project as you go. So that's just a way of visualizing. And I call these conversation starters, right? So you put them up and say, what do you think? Like I've been doing, what do you think? So, you know, are we here or are we there? Are we actually in the right place for this part of the project? And it gives you a safe way to say, well, hang on a minute, we're football mode right now. You know, instead of saying, no, Catherine, you know, stop bringing your good ideas because you should have done that yesterday. We can say, well, look, we're in football mode, but if you've got a few ideas, maybe we can put them on the, you know, consider later, you know, or say, do we actually make a conscious choice to go back into new idea mode because maybe we've got 1,000 bad ideas and not enough good ones. But you make that choice and you agree within the conversation spiral. Comments, thoughts, make sense? Ready to move on?
So Arthur, is there a sweet spot between, like I'm realizing as you're talking that when you say becoming adaptable, you're talking both individually and collectively.
Yep.
Is there a sweet spot? Is there an overlap? Is there something you can use if an organization's good at individual adaptability, but not good at corporate adaptability, for example? Is there a way to leverage that?
It's a really good question, Stuart. And, you know, it's the classic, you know, sort of consultant's answer of it depends, right? The answer is yes, absolutely. And you see this in organizations all the time. People say, what's the culture like in this organization? What they're really saying is how many subcultures do we have? Because you get, you know, when you wander through the coffee room and you see, you know, basketball team and football team all sitting around the same table, you know, and the football team, you know, particularly if they're led by, you know, the biggest, oldest dinosaur of them all, are all bitching about, you know, all the crap that goes wrong in this organization, right? And yet, you know, in the same coffee room at the other table, they're all sitting about all of the exciting things that they're going to do tomorrow. The problem is that, you know, those subcultures don't interact with each other, and they're not got that open-mindedness to, you know, to put that into formal conversation spiral structures, you know, to take it forward. The people who are aggressively criticizing the organization need to turn that whinge into a potential project or idea or implementable thing that delivers that improvement that Catherine was talking about earlier. So you will see all of these behaviors, sometimes at an individual level, you know, like with me, I get out of bed and I'm the football team until I have my first coffee, right? It's like, you know, please be nice to me because I'm going to kill someone if I don't get some caffeine in my system, or at least until I retired. But some people bounce out of bed and they're like the basketball team. You know, oh, what can I do today? You know, yesterday was a horrible day and I went home and I was really sad. But you know what? That was yesterday. How do we then, you know, do something different today? So your ability to consciously switch between these modes is really important. It's a big part of your adaptability. And the reason why facilitated social interactions are a big part of the solution is you're getting feedback from other people, like we're doing now. You know, I asked you, what do you think? You know, what's your thoughts on this? You know, and you've all thrown a comment in. So instead of just being my thoughts on this, that feedback and reflection, the consideration of the other points of view, put into a conversation spiral, really enables all of us to be able to see more opportunities and more problems. But a problem is just an opportunity in disguise, right? Just waiting to be fixed. So that's kind of how that works, facilitated social interactions. Probably a little less talk of me and a little more of you, but sometimes I can be a little hard to shut up, right?
I have a question.
Amir? Yep.
You have a personal value, correct? You go to a new company and the company values are not compatible with your personal value. What you should do? What is your option?
Okay. I would not even take a job interview with an organization whose values did not align with mine. On the call, the only reason I was on the call that immediately prior to this one was because there is an organization whose values and demonstrated actions are about running education programs, about sustainability and mutual relationships in the world. And they're literally a global organization. I wanted to be part of that conversation because absolutely that's completely aligned with what I do. If somebody said to me, look, just before you go to KMLF and have a conversation with them, can you come and talk to us? And they're a tobacco company, an arms dealer, some sort of, a drug company. I wouldn't even think. I say, no, I'm on another call and I haven't got time and I'm really not that interested. Find somebody else. Look at that, a cup of tea arrives. How mutually valuable is that? Thank you, John.
I think it is
looking after me because I've been literally on back-to-back calls since about 3 o'clock today. You really have to find organisations that align with your values, or you're going to be seriously unhappy. You're going to be one of that, sort of aggressive football group that sit around the coffee table. Okay, you go home with some money in your pocket each day, but you're really not going to be happy in the organisation. Finding an organisation that aligns to your values in practice, as opposed to what they say on their website, can also be a challenge.
But sometimes you want to go to apply for a home loan with the bank, but you see, all this is bullshit. What you can do nothing because you are captivated in the system.
Yeah.
How can change
it? It's a real challenge, and sometimes the only work you can get might be for that bank, and then that's fundamentally different to your values, right? So personally, I wouldn't do it, but I'm luckily in a fairly privileged position to make that choice. If you're in a position where you can't make that choice, like you're a new immigrant, you just got to get a job, and you just got to do that job, you separate your source of financial support from your source of personal growth and passion. And ideally, you can find, it's a bit like the Japanese concept of ikigai. I don't know whether you're familiar with that, but have a look, IKI-GAI, look it up. There's lots of stuff on the internet about it. But basically, it's about balancing what you're good at, what your passion is, how you can create value, and what you can make money from, and finding that combined areas. In other words, aligning your values with what you actually do and how you make money. And that's quite a challenge for some people. And a lot of people don't get there, but it's really good that you're asking the question. We can talk more about that over a cup of coffee sometime, now that we don't have to wear masks, etc., right? All right. That's the second concept. The second concept is building collaborative conversation spirals into your DNA, to really, get people to consciously think about that. And after all, it becomes very natural. And using tools, not necessarily the organization will do. Sometimes it can be just a picture or a couple or something that stimulates people to think outside the box. Too often, literal people just keep kind of hitting at the problem front on in a very literal way. But I don't know whether you read the book Obliquity. It's interesting. So an oblique angle is a steep angle. So obliquity is about coming in and glancing off the problem, coming in at a different angle to see it from a different point of view, and not trying to take it on just flat like that, but finding a way to chip at it. And maybe in this metaphor, take out this bit and then this bit and this bit, and you chip away at it and do the bits that you can do in order to get that improvement over time. In a really good organization, the obliquity, say, you know, why are we even doing that? Because we can make that go away and do this. But, you know, most organizations don't have that level of EQ or empathetic capability. They're starting to look at these things now, but they're not there yet. Some do. Arup is a really good example of an organization that does. If you want to look up an organization that, in my opinion, is the best organization on the planet, Arup, A-R-U-P, just look them up. They're fantastic. Very good at knowledge management too.
A-R-O-B?
A-R-U-P. A-R-U-P. It came from a guy who's got a very, very amazing history. Came from a guy called Obi Arup, who was the guy who designed the Sydney Opera House. Yeah, every single employee is a shareholder, and you cannot be a shareholder of the organization unless you're an employee. Yeah, so everyone in the organization has a vested interest. Stu, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I try and customize that. So I look for those bits in the organization where I see a problem or I see an opportunity, like a beneficial cultural aspect, and then I try and find a little story or a little picture or whatever to really quickly convey that. And one I'm using at work at the moment, and I can't really share the picture because it's Zoom, but it's a cartoon of a snow plow coming along the street one way, dumping all the snow in people's front yards, and a guy with a snowblower going the other way, dumping all his snow off the pavement onto the road, and they're coming towards each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm saying we've got to stop this happening at CFA. Our leadership is great, our people are awesome, our commitment is fantastic, but our coordination is leading to this sort of stuff all the time. Let's try and do this better. And they get it. They see the picture and immediately they smile, and it's a bit of a, not funny, but it's amusing, and it captures their attention.
Yeah, visuals, you know, particularly cartoons, are a fantastic way as conversation starters, right? I've got a number of these. Another one is it's an organization chart that shows that the director of innovation position vacant, right? And then you look at all of the other titles. You got, you know, the chief no officer, the reject auditor, you know, and you got all of these things flowing down, and everyone around them is about sort of stopping anything from happening. And then they wonder why they got no innovation, you know, or a vacancy there, because anyone that is truly passionate about innovation can't put up with all of that negativity. The other one is the picture of the cavemen with a cart with square wheels dragging in the ground, and there's another caveman standing there with a round wheel, and he's offering the round wheel to the caveman pushing the square wheel cart, and they're all going, no, we're too busy. You can get that off the internet, right? It's a fantastic image. But these are conversation starters, right? You put that up and people just laugh, and you go, well, okay, who's got a story about that? You know, tell me about it. What could you do in order to move away from that? Why are they ignoring it? You know, what KPIs are they trying to meet that the round wheel won't actually help them to achieve if they could just back off a little bit? People say, I'm too busy. Oh, you didn't get 24 hours a day? We all got 24 hours a day. It's not that you're too busy. It's how you've chosen to use those 24 hours. It's about a lack of prioritization and a lack of leadership and a lack of, you know, decision making, not about a lack of time. Anyway, let's go on to the next activity. So conversations around visual cues that take the problems with a little bit of obliquity really facilitate your adaptability. Getting people to see from an alternative point of view makes a big difference. Okay, this is kind of extending that a little further. And I'm going to use an education example here, but this applies everywhere. I've actually just recorded a video about this, which is freely available. There's a link to a whole range of videos. I created a playlist. I need to be adaptable and get into the 20th century before I can get into the 21st, right? I created a playlist with a series of 1 to 2 minute videos with a concept and then some dialogue around the concept. The idea is that people watch it and then have a conversation. Yeah, they're free. They're just publicly available. This is one of them. So I put this up here. Like, what I'm saying is, people get taught from the day they're born how to compete. You know, you need to be the best, the fastest, the smartest, you know, the highest. You need to go to the highest ranked university. Only the best people get the best opportunities. All of this stuff. You know, we are just embedded into a competitive environment. Who teaches us how to collaborate? You know, and you know, even you get jokes like, you know, what do you call the silver medalist? Well, they're the first loser. You know, it's not about performance. It's who wins. You know, who's the best. Nobody cares about, you know, anyone else, and we need to change that to understand that if you engage with other people, you as a collective is far more competitive than you as an individual. And that requires, you know, sort of the basketball team agreeing when to shift from basketball team to football team. You can still collaborate aggressively, like when you prioritize, the example I gave before. So you just need to understand and have an open mind about how it is that we're collaborating. And it's more about alignment of behavior than it is about, you know, sort of not being controlling. Of course, we all need to control, but we all need to collaborate. So the idea is that if your internal teams are highly collaborative, they can be more creative, more innovative, they can be more productive, which means then the organization or the collective of teams as a whole are actually highly competitive in the external market, because you collaborate internally in order to you know, beat the other guys. Because if you're more creative, more trustworthy, more innovative, and more advanced, then the customers are going to come to you as the preferred supplier. Then they're going to go to the other guys, and the other guys are just trying to catch up. So the collaboration enables you to be competitive. They're not opposites, they're part of the same coin. Thoughts on that?
I think you're very right in that. Sorry, Stu, if I may. I think you have a valid point in that, but I also think that it's worth thinking about like where we actually teach this. Like, is it a competitive like culture, or is it a collaborative culture? Like, we have cultures around the world where it is like where collaboration is considered a high achievement in the individual outcome, because it's the survival of the tribe or the family rather than the individual in the, so in like the individual to do it. So it's, I think that's one point of it. So like, it's also to seek inspiration from those, which I do think is coming through more and more as the world progresses. But you still see that individualization where you put like the billionaires on the pedestal because like that's what the media circle likes to read. That's what's achieved the clicks, and what people are like saying, I want to be like that, and staying. So like, how can we as a society make sure that we can all get to that point? Absolutely,
Simon, and it's really hard, and this comes back to one of the other things later, which we probably won't get to, moving from mindset to mind flex. You know, opening minds instead of, you know, instead of reinforcing, you know, existing patterns. And there's a huge amount of cultural development work that needs to be done in order to enable that. Yeah. But you can get there. You know, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, and it's hundreds of years of Western philosophy you have to like essentially redo, which like you're not going to do in a decade.
Yeah, and you know, if you probably like most of us, more sort of collaborative and less competitive, you know, it's a fairly easy sell. But when you get into, you know, kind of, you know, a tough competitive environment, then you tend to attract competitive people, and there's more, you know, the balance of people who are collaborative versus competitive varies. Stu, I'm going to come to you just in 30 seconds, I promise. I mentioned Alex Bennett before, amazing woman who lives in the US. She created a word, co-opetition, and talk about that. You know, how do you cooperate and still be competitive? And I took that and modified it slightly to collaboration, because I think collaboration is a higher form of engagement than cooperation. And I think, you know, collaboration is what we're really trying to get to. And I think that goes back to your point, Simon. You know, we're not saying don't be competitive. You need to be able to compete, right? But at the same time, you don't want to be exclusively focused on the competitive. So we'll go to Stu.
Yeah.
And then to Brad.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Before that, just I aware of the time, so we are more or less almost time's up. But yes, still we can go.
Sure. The irony has never been lost on me, Arthur, that the most violent and competitive sport in the world, ice hockey, is also the most team-based collaborative.
Yeah.
And is played by one of the most gentle cultures on the planet.
Yeah.
And so I wondered, do you have examples that you use to get this competitive collaborative idea across? I know you've got the word, what is it? Collaborative, whatever you called it.
Yeah.
But do you have any like word pictures or examples, real life examples, rather than the extreme collaboration and extreme competitive examples that we see everywhere in our culture?
Yes, I do. It's a matter of whether we, you know, can talk them through here. And I was going to give you an example in education of, you know, showing people that collaboration is far, far better as an education platform than a competition. And I could give you many stories about that.
Yeah.
But, well, it depends what we want to do. There's a whole bunch of other examples in here. We can sort of stop at the scheduled time, which is now. We could show one or two more examples, or I could quickly show you the other slides, and then use the socialization time at the end. It's entirely up to you. This is your call. I'm here for you. What do you want to do? Do you want to do a little bit more, or do you just want to sort of break the formal part of the evening and then go into socializing? Where do you want to go?
I think if everybody's still have a bit of time, then we can like maybe Arthur can explain a little bit more and just use those social time to do a little bit more. What do you think about that? I'm happy to do that.
Maybe we can just indicate with a thumbs up or thumbs down as to, you know, whether we've got we want to, yeah,
keep going. Or
I'm in lockdown. I've got 7 days, guys.
Yeah. It looks like everyone's kind of supportive of doing a couple more. What I'll do in attempting to be adaptable, and Brad, I'll come back to your question in a moment, is I'll quickly run through and show you some of the other slides without really going into great detail about them. You'll get the sense of the slide. The images are used to stimulate the conversation, and then you engage the people talking about the topic within their context. And that's the kind of thing that opens up new possible ideas, right? So the fundamental background process are those conversation spirals, you know, sort of acknowledge and through the 8 steps, etc. You're doing that spiral using the image as a trigger and within the context of wherever you're working. That's and that's where Stu, in this particular one, you know, I'd sort of ask the question to say, so where do you think we are? What zone are we in? And if they're a really good organization, they might say, oh, we're right over here, you know, when we're doing this, but or these parts of the organization's here, but those ones are over there. You know, any of that sort of open, shared, respectful dialogue will actually help people. You know, you want the conversations to start, right? You want the two truck drivers to talk to each other and say, well, hang on a minute, you know, yeah. All right, so what I'll do is I'll quickly run through and just do like a couple of seconds on each of the slides, because then I think they're intuitive enough for you to be able to then use. I want you to use these things, right? Go out and put them out there and just acknowledge the source. That's all. You know, I'm not going to send you a bill or an invoice or, you know, sort of royalty payment or demand or whatever. Brad, before we go to the other pictures, you've had your hand up there for a bit.
Yeah, we're talking about the competition and the collaboration. I think one of the inhibitors to collaboration at an organizational level is the fact that everyone has to compete for budget, right? So if your budget is dependent on your team and you as a leader achieving certain KPIs or outcomes, there's no incentive to collaborate. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's the same pool of money, it just gets labeled and stuck somewhere and said, okay, that's your budget. If you want more money, you have to come, do a business case. So there's this inherent unhealthy friction built into the system.
Yeah, it's particularly in larger organizations. There's one organization that you may have met, the guy from Blackmagic Design. Remember, we had him involved in Creative Melbourne.
Yep.
There is no management structure at all. There are no managers. He employs about 1,000 people, and they work in, it's almost like a holacracy, right?
Yeah.
Where the teams are working in small teams together, and there is instant feedback about what's going on. Like they're connected, and their natural way of dealing with things is to ask questions. And it's just such a brilliant culture. And this organisation dominates, a major industry like the film industry, and not just here in Australia, but in Hollywood. And they make a lot of the equipment for processing the films and all of this sort of stuff. And they've got like hundreds of awards for their innovation and creativity.
Yeah.
For a small organisation. And because they're fundamentally collaborative, and because of that, they're just way competing. They're actually making better quality product for not cheaper, but a fraction of the cost of their competitors, because they just get there so fast. And and I won't do the education example, but just picking up on your example, Blackmagic Design's a really great example. I wrote a case study about them in a book, Stu. I'll have to drag that out and give it to you if you want to have a look. But the other one is the use of the wiki, which we're going to talk about in June in a KMLF as well. Using wikis to stimulate collaborative involvement. Okay, so let's just quickly look at some of the other images. We won't do the activity around them, but it's a similar type of activity, right? So, and all of these, by the way, I have used. It's not, some, oh, geez, I wonder if this works. Some of them many times, some of them just a couple of times because it was a specific thing. But this one I have used many times, looking at the breakdown of your culture. So we'd use the organizations and characters to show which within a particular entity, like a team or an organization, or you could be one person and another. So two different entities, you look at the expectations, the behavioral expectations they have, at the core, what must I have? What was also desirable? What would I tolerate? And what would I reject? And typically, the red zones are where we disagree. So you expect something and I reject it, or vice versa, or you desire it, but I reject it. The red zones are normally where conflict comes from. But if you look at them to say, why do we see this differently? So you use the conversation spiral to explore the difference with respect. Why is it different to you than for me? And you know what? Very often when you start to do that, inquiry around the difference, it's highly creative and extremely good learning that comes out of it. But you've got to facilitate the conversation in a respectful way to all parties. So that's how that works. There's a lot more about it. And in fact, I'm recording a video on this tomorrow, which I'll put online. So the next one, I think a lot of you may have seen this. This is an image I've logged off the internet. I tried to find the original source of it, but it was so ubiquitous that it was hard to find out where it originally came from. I'd love to acknowledge who first created it. I don't know. But the idea here is, it's just magic. You look at this and you get it instantly. The person looking at from the orange angle sees a cylinder as a square. The person looking from the blue angle sees it as a circle. And, if they're in conflict mode, in closed mindset mode, they will argue, whether it's a square or a circle. If they're in collaborative conversation spiral mode, they go, oh, so what are you saying? I wonder why that is. And if they actually shared their perspectives of it, they would come to figure out that they're both looking at a cylinder. Yeah, but it's more complex than that. That is just two dimensions. Even this is a simplification of reality, right? Objects are never something as regular as a geometric solid object. They're truncated, they're funny angles, particularly social environments. This could be a social environment we're looking at. What do I see when I look at KMLF? What do I perceive? So you get this, not just a 360, but a sphere of different perspectives of it. We all have a different experience of it. What Lucian thinks we're looking at in this conversation is different to Stu, which is different to Sharon, which is different to me. But also what we've seen in COVID is what's going on in that little, red highlighted area. There are some projections of reality which are deliberately not correct, but presented as such. And that's what you've got to look out for. And this is where your critical thinking is important. So that's what that one's about. You get people talking about that and exploring it. I think several of you have seen behavioural DNA. This is where, we use the organisational zoo cards to actually visualise the culture. So it's not me saying what I think their culture is. This is them saying by laying out the behaviour cards, putting them into categories, and then they look at what are the patterns of behaviour. And you can just instantly see this, that everyone agrees. The owl, for example, is an absolute expected behaviour. So that's the collaborative, sharing, knowledge working. That is something that this particular organisation thought was absolutely a requirement in the case of what they were looking at, which was knowledge leadership. And you can have amazing conversations around that. So visualize the culture, get them to say what they think the culture is. What's really good is the extension. What do we think the culture is now? What do we think it should be for us to be even more successful? What is the behavioral shift that we need to make? Do we need more owl or less owl? And it's them co-creating these images by playing with cards. So we're using creative metaphor, we're having conversations, we're having stacked conversations, individual groups. So that's 1 to 12 or 12 different groups. They've come up with similar, but also slightly different. You look at the differences and the similarities, and you discuss those patterns and what then needs to be done about it. So that's how that works. This comes back to, I think, what either Lucian or Simon was saying there before about I'm more in the known factor. This is a really powerful thing. You just put the picture up, ask people to stand if you co-create, if you're co-located, or if you're virtual, you ask to put them, give them a number from 1 to 10, and you can do that as a poll quiz, or you can do that as just pop the number in and see what's most common into the chat. So there's a variety of ways of doing it, face to face or virtual. You look at the picture and you say, where am I on this scale? Am I most comfortable right down, when I know exactly what's going on and everything is predictable, or am I one of these really excitable types that want to jump out of planes with a parachute and a whole range of other things? I want to be up in the unknown. I don't get my buzz, from what I already know. I want to try new experiences all the time. And getting them people to explore that is very powerful. One of the questions that I would often ask is, would you ever kill anyone? Number one means absolutely, I know that I would never do that, and the other end is, well, maybe I've already done it. I've actually done this with soldiers in the room who have killed people, and so we then explore, what's going on. But then the second question is the powerful one, right? You actually share, and then you ask the follow-up question, which is, okay, here's the scenario. I've got the person that you love the most sitting in the chair in front of me. I'm the evil Dr. Arthur who, is a psychopath who has killed many people. I've just escaped from prison after 20 years. I really miss killing people, and I'm going to shoot the one that you love the most. You have a gun, and if you take the shot, you can kill me and save your loved one. Or if you don't take the shot, I'm going to kill your loved one. Do you kill or do you not kill? And of course, all the people that were down at 1 suddenly move up to 10, and it shows that it's not about right and wrong or morals or anything else. It's about what would you do in a situation, and it really highlights the fact that you can make choices that you thought you would never make. You just need a different scenario and be prepared to act in that scenario. So that's what that one's about. And you see the knowing, doing, being, becoming. The more you venture into new areas and new ideas, the more adaptable you become. You become more confident. It doesn't mean that, you are changing your values. It just means that you are acknowledging and recognizing that sometimes, you have to make a decision between a crappy decision and a shitty one. And can you make that, or do you just crumble and fall apart? Life is not about deciding between 2 amazing possibilities. I'll have the pistachio ice cream or the mint, that's not what life's about. Very often, and it's very rarely about the ice cream you hate and the ice cream you love. It's about, you know, two difficult situations and which one is the way forward. And you're just not sure which way is going to give you the best outcome, but you still have to make a decision and act. These types of conversations build your confidence and capability to do those things. And I won't talk about that. I think you can have a look at it if you ask questions about it. I probably will record a video on that sometime in the next couple of weeks. But actually, in the 3-minute thesis competition back in 2011, I talked about this image for 3 minutes. So that video is on the AUGZOO YouTube channel, so you can find that there. So there's others in here I didn't plan to talk about. Actual examples of becoming adaptable and working in the pandemic, is it, Stu? If you want another couple of stories, there's there. I have more of them. This playlist is where I'm putting all of these videos. They're different images, a quick conversation about them, and then you could just pick them up and use them to have a conversation with yourself, self-reflection, if you like, or to get a small group together in your workplace, or you know, your church, or your social group, or whatever, you know, a few beers over a pub. In the WASH forum, I guess, Catherine, for you, you know, just start a conversation and see where it goes. And the more of those conversations that you lead and facilitate, the more adaptable you become. And, you know, I would argue the more happy you become, the value you create, and your performance, whether it be personal or professional, will improve. So I'm going to shut up now. There are all of the other images. The link is there. And actually, what I'll do is I'll pop the link in the chat group too. Actually, I think no, it was in the KMLF group that I put it, wasn't it?
Yes, I've put that on the chat already.
Oh, great. Good on you. Thanks very much. It's almost like you're my twin. Is that why you got the same?
You share the same brain or mind, something like that. Yeah.
I will unshare the screen unless anyone questions, thoughts. Sorry, we're into the social time. Happy to, just hear your questions, engage, socialize for the last 15 minutes or so. Back to you, Dick.
Thank you. But anyway, so what I will do is, first of all, thanks all for giving us like a really good presentation on how we can become more adaptable, and also provide with us some useful diagrams, informations that we can actually use in our work. What I will do right now is I will stop the recording, and then we can have just maybe another 10 minutes